Dear Sir, I know the possibilities you ever receiving this letter are about 1 in a million, but I'm so desperate at this stage for help that I just gotta try for the sake of my family.
So a few years ago, I was working for a film producer, and I'd gone to LA to visit his storage unit. While I was there, I noticed about 12 boxes filled with letters. There were so many letters. They were all postmarked January 1970, all addressed to Michael James Brody Jr. And I'm talking thousands and thousands and thousands of letters stacked in boxes. And they were all unopened.
I'm going to give away, I think, $50 million within the next year and set up a foundation and give money to the poor.
Dear Mr. Brody.
Dear Mike.
Dear Mr. Brody, I've read so much about you.
He makes a major announcement that if anybody needs money, here's your answer, Michael Brody. Bingo.
I want to try and cure the problems of the world.
He's so imbued by love that he's going to share his love with everybody by giving them money.
It was 8 6-foot bags stacked with mail from all over the world.
There were hundreds, thousands, I don't know how many people were in the street. He took a handful of 20s and threw it out the window just to watch the madness.
Dear Mr. Brody, are you happy?
He had a plan to end the war in Vietnam.
Do you know much about PCP?
We got on a helicopter and we go to the White House. And he tells him that we're here to see Nixon.
Dear Mr. Brody.
Dear Mr. Brody.
Dear Mr. Brody, the reason I'm writing is right now I have 6 children. We live in an old log house. If I could just receive some help.
Dear Mr. and Mrs. Brody.
Dear Mr. and Mrs. Brody.
Dear Mike.
Was he sincere? Was he a victim? Was he a victimizer?
I want to open up every single letter.
There's no other kind. There's no other kind. Yeah. So Tower came out in the fall of 2016, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And we did. Was that Kino Lorber? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I remember coming to a studio somewhere in Midtown. It was a very serpentine, but actually, it wasn't your studio. It was.
No.
I think you met me at Kirsch's office.
Yeah. I think
we were like in a closet.
Yeah, it was right. That's what it was. And we're in this very small. In fact, this room that I'm in now reminds me a little bit of that room. I have a good memory, and I can kind of remember the circumstances. And because I think it was like Guillermo was there or somebody from Brigade at the time. Anyway, but now I'm in my office, so it's kind of nicer to be in my office. But
where's your office at?
I'm in Red Hook, New York, not the one in Brooklyn.
Right. Oh, Red Hook, the city.
It's many things, but it's not a city. I can tell you that.
Where is that? Is that up like near Kingston or something?
Yeah, right across the river from Kingston, right near between Rhinebeck and Hudson, I guess,
Yeah, well, that's where a lot of our story takes place, right up near there. Saugerties, Woodstock.
Yeah, right across the river technically right across from, like, I live right across the river from Saugerties and that whole area. So I love it up here. I have to say, I've taken very well to it. So, and anyway, it's great to see you again, and I love this aspect of what I'm doing over this period of time is so long now that I can bring back some of the great filmmakers that I've met over the years, like yourself, and bring back for subsequent projects. It really means a lot to me. So I'm glad we were able to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny. I think around the time we met, I honestly haven't paid a lot of attention to podcasts and critics and stuff. I'm usually just kind of down in Austin with my head down.
Right.
But I had such a good time talking with you. And then I felt like after you posted that episode, every other filmmaker I was friends with came out of the woodwork to say how they were friends with you and they'd done your podcast. And then I went back and listened to some of those, and it's been great. So I feel like a part of your community through that one interaction we had. I'm glad to build on that.
Well, yeah, and I thank you, and I know it was like South by Southwest threw up.
Mm-hmm.
That's my podcast, you know, for lack of a maybe a more pleasant expression. But and then and it's been it's been great to kind of build that up with so many great people. You know, I mean, it's the art, it's the stories that you guys tell, but it's also, you know, I mean, people making films such as Dear Mr. Brody and Tower. You know, I mean, this comes from an essential need to tell provocative stories that mean something to you, and you know, it's I don't know. So that authenticism, that earnestness is what I'm compelled to, and I think I want people to discover these films. You know, help get more people to discover them. Let's put it that way.
I appreciate that. You know, I was talking to some kids in Texas where I live, a school about a year ago. Well, more than that, before the pandemic. And one of the kids asked me, you know, if I had lived in Texas 200 years ago, what would I do for a living? Because filmmaking was not an option. And I thought, well, I'd probably work out on a ranch like everybody or something. I don't know if I'd be like some kind of a cowboy. I'd be a very bad cowboy. And all day long, I would be like the bad cowboy who couldn't keep up. But at the end of the day, I would be the one posted up at the fire, and then people would gather around. And that's when my day would begin. And the sun would go down, and then I'd tell the story of what happened that day. And I'd tell it a little bigger. I'd edit out the boring parts. I'd build up the exciting parts, and you know, we build some mythology together. So I do see it as a little bit of a calling. I don't know what else to do besides storytell. You know, and if I didn't have the privilege of doing it with a team of collaborators and with a structure and focus on putting something on the screen, you know, I'd just be the guy talking too much, you know, in the back of the grocery store, or, you know, sitting waiting by the fire, or anywhere else.
With the playing maybe some campfire songs that you wrote, maybe even. These you're just you know, you're the character or subject of your new film, Michael Brody Jr. is. I wonder if you draw any. Having chosen him as your subject, and then before that, what was the
sniper?
The sniper's name in Austin?
Yeah, I mean, his name is Charles Whitman, but we don't say that name all that much in that film, because that was kind of one of the main points of that film, is that it wasn't about, you know, him and what he did, but it was about the impact. And with Brody, I think there is a correlation. It's not I don't want to be overly facile with it, because obviously, you know, the sniper, Charles Whitman, had such a tragically horrific impact on people, and I would never paint Brody with that brush whatsoever. But I would say it is the story of one man's big action that then fragments into all these different reactions. And I think I am drawn to stories like that. I'm drawn to stories of kind of cultural impact and shared public experience. You know, those aren't the only stories I'm drawn to, but I see like a kind of a direct correlation for me, you know, in my own life, from a moment, you know, that has loomed large in 1986 when the Challenger explosion happened. You know, there was a whole generation of kids my age that watched the Challenger explosion live on TV, or watched the Challenger launch live on TV. And then as it became an explosion, we all experienced this like fragmentation of reality where suddenly what we thought we were watching wasn't what we were watching, and what we were watching was a big question mark. And then there was that moment of recognition and realization that said, oh, this is bad. And now kind of our world has changed through that. And I felt that exact feeling while making Tower. It was a question I constantly asked people who were there, like, when was the moment they recognized that the world was different? When was the moment that they realized what it was? And then what decision did they make in that moment? Because I'm like, me as a fourth grader watching TV, you know, they were in the line of fire or witness to it anyway, and they had decisions to make. And here in the story of Michael Brody Jr., you know, it's a totally different temperature. It's a totally different, you know, modality of impact. But the process is the same, you know. These are people living their lives. We know from their letters, oftentimes, you know, difficult lives, challenged by the obstacles of the world around them. And then Brody makes this big offer, and there's a moment of recognition in those people that says, hey, maybe he could help me. Maybe I could participate in this big giveaway.
Right.
And then for us, tracking those folks down years later, we came to realize, oh, this is a very different kind of story, because unlike the Challenger explosion, which has deeply impacted me, or the tower shooting, which forever changed that community, many people who responded to Michael Brody didn't actually remember doing so. And so we were inviting them to turn back the page of time in their own life through engaging with these letters that they'd written themselves. And that's, you know, that was pretty incredible.
Did you know about, yeah, because the first part or we go into the film when we're kind of learning about Michael Brody, who, you know, he inherited, right, the 25
That's right.
mil, and then he decides he's just giving it away. And so, and then people, you know, obviously appeal to him for the money. Like they want to be the recipient of his giving it away. But did this trove of letters that were never opened, did you know about that when you started it, the project, or that's something you stumbled across? Because,
well, I mean, the story of how the story kind of unfolded, you know, isn't like those other stories where I had like an inkling of knowledge or some knowledge. In this case, I had never heard of Michael Brody Jr. I knew nothing about his giveaway or his offer or him. I knew nothing about the letters until, you know, Melissa Glassman, my producing partner, who's featured in the film. You know, Melissa had one of those experiences that she tells in the film, but we weren't obviously there to capture it. You know, she was working for legendary Hollywood producer Ed Pressman. You know, Ed is
who subsequently became an EP on the film, right?
Yes, that's right. And so Ed is, you know, he's produced over 80 feature films, going back to Badlands and Das Boot and The Crow and Wall Street. And Thank You for Smoking.
I don't know any of those.
Yeah, right.
Those, yeah.
Bloodsport, Conan. I mean, it's like a never-ending list. And Melissa was working for Ed. She was at his storage unit in LA. Seeking something. I think Ed was being honored by the Academy, and they were looking for some materials to share with the Academy. And in the process of kind of going through Ed's personal archive, she discovered these 12 large boxes that were all marked Brody, and they were all filled with letters. And the letters were all postmarked January of 1970. They were all to one man, Michael James Brody Jr., and they were all unopened. So, I mean, that's a lot of alls all at once. And
so
Melissa,
that's the catalyst.
It really is. And so when Melissa pulls these letters out, she asked Ed's wife, who was there with her, if she could open some. Ed's wife, Annie, told her the story of the hippie-millionaire. She talked to Ed and said, oh, yeah, I wanted to make a movie about that in the 70s. We tried. It didn't come together. He was partnered with Shep Gordon, you know, Supermensch Shep Gordon.
Supermensch.
And
friend Austin Powers.
That's right. Among others, many others. And
Ozzy, well, I mean, Alice Cooper. Yeah, go ahead.
He's still Alice Cooper's longtime manager, only manager. And so Melissa endeavored to re-engage with this story. She picked up where Ed had left off in the 70s. She said, let's make this movie. So that was really exciting for her and for Ed, but they didn't have a script. The script that Ed had commissioned in the 70s was lost to time. He'd held on to these 12 boxes of letters, but not to a single copy of this screenplay by a Rolling Stone writer named Stu Werbin, who passed away years and years ago. And so Melissa said she was going to start fresh, like developing a Brody biopic, a fictionalized account. She was looking for writers. She was putting together a package. And in the process of making a pitch deck and wanting images of these incredible letters, she reached out to her college roommate, who happens to be my wife, and that's Sarah Wilson.
Wow.
The esteemed cinematographer, my lovely wife and producing partner at Go Valley. And so Melissa reached out to Sarah, told her the story of discovering the letters, the story of Michael, and asked Sarah to photograph these letters. And when I saw the letters and when I heard the story, I saw something a little different than what they had in mind. I saw an opportunity to dig into Michael's story and the story of the letters through a documentary. And I pitched it to Melissa as such. I said, you should keep developing the biopic of Michael Brody, but my concern, or my creative concern, is that this incredible experience you've had finding these letters will be lost in a biopic about Michael from the 70s. And at best, the letters will most likely represent, a volume of response, a montage of letters falling from the sky. Because that's, what it feels like. I always think about that scene in Miracle on 34th Street when they bring in and they dump out all the letters
to Santa.
Santa. Yeah, we had that in the film for a while.
Well, that would have been, I could see that.
Yeah, there was a lot of, there's a lot that doesn't end up in the final cut, but I always kind of connected with that. And I said to Melissa, I just think that these letters you're finding, because she would tell us the stories that she was reading. And the stories are incredible. Michael Brody said, I have $25 million to give away. And if you need money for anything, for any reason, if it'll make your life better, if it'll solve some problems, if it'll bring you closer to peace, I will give you money, because I want to inspire other millionaires to do the same. I want to change the world through good vibrations, positive giving, philanthropy. And so when you open these letters, you hear these responses from people saying, if you're giving away money, this is what I could do with it. People saying, like, I have incredible need. I'm trapped in a corner. I don't know where else to turn. You are a godsend to me right now. Some of the letters were small and simple. One of my favorites is from a 6-year-old girl who just said, I've never had a winter coat. If you send me $5, I can buy a winter coat. Some of them were big and lofty. We had a bunch of letters from different groups of hippies that were all seeking to buy land out west to build, to plant their commune on. We had entrepreneurs who were starting a carpet business, a recording studio, a restaurant chain, a mom and pop cleaners, everything you can imagine. And so that was my pitch to Melissa. I know this is a lot of words, but what I said to Melissa is, what if we made a documentary that lifted the letters and intermingled Michael and the letters together, and you could still make the biopic based on it, because it's an untold story and there's lots of room to explore, both creatively and in a nonfiction and in a fiction sense. So Melissa took that idea to Ed. And of course, Ed didn't know who I was. I was kind of a nobody from Austin, Texas. But I was in the process of finishing Tower as we were still making Tower when this idea was bubbling up. And so the last 9 months of Tower were also the first 9 months of talking about Brody and getting it going. And
there has, even since the film went on my radar with South by or whatever it was, it's been a long gestation period.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's crazy is, Ed tried to make this film starting around 1972.
Okay.
And here
so
we are.
50-year gestation period.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Ed joined the team. He said, let's do it. Those are his letters. He owns those and he's taken care of them all these years. So we had to have his participation to do what I wanted. And of course, that was also an incredibly wonderful opportunity to work with a legend and to get to know Ed and his son Sam and his wife Annie, and so that's what we've been doing. We've been doing that for the last 5, 6 years, 7 years.
Wow. Well, it's called Dear Mr. Brody. It'll be opening as we speak today, March 4th. Good sir, March 4th. And in New York and in Santa Monica, or at the Monica Lemley in LA, as well as on demand VOD today. So we'll post this ASAP and get the word out. I noticed a couple of you mentioned before when we started, you mentioned the community that, and there's a Venn diagram there between us, of course, and a couple of folks that I would include in there are in the film that you use as reenactments, right? You cast some actors, some local actors from out of Austin, right? Or in the case of Chris Dubek, I guess, where is he these days? LA?
Chris is officially an Angelino, I guess they call themselves, but yes, he was an Austinite for many years.
Frank Mosley.
He's
in LA too.
Great filmmaker, originally from Dallas, Arlington. He's out in LA these days, but he was in Austin when we first connected. Right. Jeff Marslet, who I knew from his days in Austin, he has since moved to Boulder, Colorado, where he's a filmmaker and a professor. Yeah. Andrew Bujalski has a part in the film.
I forgot about that.
It's a excuse me. It's a voice part, and so you don't see him on screen, so it's easy to kind of miss in recognition of some of those voice actors. There's the great Texas singer-songwriter Carrie Rodriguez, who's about to have a Broadway musical open up here.
Really?
In 2 weeks. She's one of our great voice actors.
You're pointing to in New York City at a hotel?
I'm in New York City at a hotel, so I'm pointing uptown.
Because it will, for New Yorkers, you're going to be obviously tonight, I assume, introducing the film and doing probably a Q&A at the Quad Cinema.
That's right.
Who's doing that with you, by the way?
So it'll be me, my wife, Sarah Wilson, previously mentioned producer and cinematographer, Melissa Robin Glassman, our producing partner and subject and discoverer of these letters, as well as Rebecca Kent, who is our archival producer, and so helps us track down so much of that incredible, unseen 1970s New York footage. And speaking of unseen, she's also the only member of the crew I don't think I've ever met in person, because
is that right?
She lives here in New York, and so we hired her, and worked with her on the phone, so tonight will be our first time.
Well, if I was down there, and I guess technically I could still make it. I'm only a couple of hours away at the most, but I would moderate that, I would, and but I'm sure you have a perfectly good moderator for the Q&A. So yeah, that's fantastic. And by the way, just to show how incestuous our circles are, I actually worked on Andrew's current project, Andrew Bujalski's current film. I was on the crew. They shot a part of his new film, which I'm not sure where it's at right now in post, but they shot part of it right here in the town I live in. So,
wow. I mean, the last time I saw him, he was telling me about that project and kind of like the incredible lengths that they've gone to sew together this disparate.
It's right. It's story. A stunt. It's kind of based on a stunt, technical stunt, but it's, having said that, it's as authentic and as connective, motivationally speaking, as far as he's concerned. He's trying to create that's the same kind of connectivity and emotional performances that you'd get in any film, even though we'll leave it for a later day to talk about that film. I was so pleased to be working, and he was in, I guess, Austin maybe, or wherever he was. He when I was on the set, I was with the actors and a sound and the camera person, and then he was remote, and Houston was remote, the producer, and it was pretty interesting experience. Anyway. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is like we're all figuring it out these days, right? We're trying to, right,
and hopefully, I mean, with a guy like Andrew, who's just got such an endless amount of perspective and kind of creative engagement with interpersonal storytelling, I'm expecting great things, and I'm eager to see what it is he's done in this mysterious format that we're talking about. But I know a little bit about it from him, and I think it'll be really cool. It reminds me of that Spike Jonze movie, Her, which, she never appears on screen as far as I can recall the entire film, but it's one of the most incredible relationship, interpersonal relationship stories that I think hit the screen that year.
That's true. There's a bit of a kind of I call it a stunt, even though in a way that almost kind of puts a judge, there's almost like, maybe it's not the greatest term. It almost suggests like it's just doing it for shock value or something like that. But I don't mean it, I don't intend it in that way. I just mean that it's a little bit of a like a gimmick way of telling a story, but it's no, ultimately what you're after are authentic performances. And so that's, and as you just said, in that, Spike Jonze movie, he got it, there too. I mean, those scenes were, Joaquin Phoenix, he's just walking around it's brilliant,
Yeah. I don't know whether you'd call it a stunt or you'd call it a gimmick or you'd call it a structural opportunity.
Okay, that's a better term. I'll go with that. Structural opportunity.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to ask Andrew when it's done.
That's true. You can co-host that episode.
Love to be there.
Because, but we got a little bit off subject. I apologize, but I keep, Dear Mr. Brody, directed by and written, I guess you could say.
Some people say that. I don't usually think in those terms, but I think somewhere in the credits it says that. Not our credits, but I think in the press notes. I don't know.
Okay.
It's the thing about it is, I'm sorry. It's the whole thing is such a collaborative experience. Right. And so I share the creative responsibility with Megan Gilbride, who produced Tower with me and produced Brody with us, Sarah Wilson, Melissa Glassman, and our editor, Austin Reedy. The collages, the animated collages that kind of play throughout were made by a guy named John Mark Lapham.
Beautiful.
The music is written by Osei Esed, who did the music for Tower, and I've been working with for now 20 years musically. He lives right near, not far from you, up in Ossining. So we work remotely, but write together over the phone. Our sound design is by Lyman Hardy the third, and he's an incredible sound designer. Yeah.
Okay.
And I get the opportunity to pull everybody together and to kind of drive the team.
Yeah.
But I love working in that, and I'm fortunate that just about everybody on the team, the only person on the team I hadn't worked with before was Melissa, who we've been friends with for many years and has her own incredible, background in film and storytelling, coming out of Ed's office for 6 years and other, so it's a team effort.
Well, after all the festivals, and this you really did have a rather robust festival run, considering the pandemic since then, and right, Tribeca, Telluride, many other festivals actually. So finally, it's coming to a theater near you if you're in New York or LA, but definitely, and then maybe possibly other theaters.
I think we're looking at, I think it'll definitely screen in Austin with Austin Film Society. And I think that there's a strong possibility that we're going to play in Boulder and maybe in Boston. I think up in Woodstock, we're lining up a small screening. We played the Woodstock Festival, which is actually our very first kind of launch because, look, the last 2 years have been crazy in so many ways. And I would never compare the travails of our little independent film to the issues of the world. But
everybody's legitimately affected and impacted. So continue.
That's true. Well, I would say the robust festival run that you referred to looks more robust on paper than it felt. It was, I walked out of Lyman's sound mix to make it the final creative decision that would end up to be up on the screen for the movie on March 10th of 2020. So 3 days later, South by was canceled. We were March 10th set to premiere at Tribeca here in New York, which felt like the right place for this film to kind of make its mark. It's such a New York story. And but 3 days later, South by got canceled. Much of the world shut down. Shortly after that, Tribeca was canceled. Then we were invited to play Telluride that year, which was a dream, but that was canceled. Other festivals that had lined up all started switching over to digital only platforms. And we decided we thought that this, every movie is a movie that wants to be seen with an audience, but we felt like this in particular should be a communal event and less of a
isolated,
fragmented, isolated.
Yeah, fragmented, right.
So at that time, that's what made sense, because it seemed like, the end was just around the corner at any moment. And then when it wasn't around the corner, we were happy to accept an in-person drive-in experience at Woodstock.
Right.
Right down the road from where Michael and Renee story unfolded. And Melissa was able to attend. She's from Westchester, and Jamie Brody, Michael's son, came out. He's, lives in that area, still in Saugerties. And so that was kind of our our launch, and it felt like a spiritual beginning, and it was exciting to be on a drive-in. Sarah and Megan and I weren't able to go, but we heard good things. And then again, it kind of calmed down. And then finally the new year started, and South by invited us. And that was really incredible, because we got to be one of the few films that plays both Tribeca and South by.
Yeah, that's not typical, right?
Yeah. And then as the world opened up, we finally got our New York City premiere here at Tribeca in 2021. And Telluride came back around, and we got to go have that experience, which was phenomenal.
Just amazing. That's great.
But to be honest with you, I've only seen the film with audiences a handful of times. Versus Tower, where Tower played, I don't know how many, 65, 100 festivals, and I attended at least 30 screenings, more maybe. And
well, that's what I was kind of getting at. I mean, I feel like if you could have, if there wasn't a pandemic, you probably would have done again, done that. It seems like that's like I don't know.
It's such an incredible, I mean, and I've, this is my fourth feature doc, and I've had experiences now, a variety of reactions and responses to my work. And so we weren't sure how the world would respond to the story. Politically, the climate of the last 5-6 years has been such a challenge for so many people, that to make a film that really looks at so many of the questions and challenges of modern life, and really centers need and economic disparity and inequality in the way that the film does. We weren't sure if audiences were going to want that, if they were looking for something, that kind of only took them closer to the problems that seem so apparent all over, or if they wanted, to escape that reality.
Right.
The jury's still out. So it'll be exciting, now that, we have this great limited theatrical run, which is just a fun way to engage with audiences directly. But, as of today, we're up on iTunes, Amazon, and, people who are interested can find us for the first time, really, into the public. And so we'll see how people feel, if they lean into it or not.
Lean into it, dear Mr. Brody, right now. Thank you very much. It was great to see you again.
It's great to spend time together. I hope the next time we get to do it face to face.
For sure. We'll make it happen. Yeah.
I appreciate it. And now I know if I'm going to do some remote filming in that area, that you have experience, vis-a-vis the Bujalski technique.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. Please do. I'd love to be involved in any creative project that you're involved with, of course. That'd be great.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you. Have a good luck tonight. Enjoy.
Appreciate it.
Okay.